We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the September.
Oh, I'm sorry, Monty.
Oh,
I
are
need
we
to unmute.
muted?
I apologize.
That's such a beautiful picture of me right there. So,
All right, ready? We've filmed it on last.
okay, I'm going to back up a little bit.
Where's my agenda?
So it's just a few minutes after 11. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the September 11th, 2023 meeting of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board for the City of Lawrence. My name's Monty Sokup. I'm the chair currently. I'm going to take roll, and we're going to establish a quorum, and then we are going to have a few words about meeting conduct and all that kind of stuff. And
I hope this is an annual thing as opposed to directing it at some certain person. On conduct.
No, we're having, it's just the meeting, the normal thing we read at the beginning of the meeting. So I'm going to take roll, and then we'll get going from there. So Karen Willie.
Here.
Sarah Waters.
I'm here, and Mr. Chair, I will need to leave the meeting today at noon, and I apologize for that.
Okay. Thank you for that heads up. Nicholas Ward. Phil Englehart. Mark Bueller.
Here.
Christina Gentry.
Here.
Erica Zimmerman. Dana Ortiz. Shannon Oury.
Here.
Thomas Howe.
Here, and Mr. Chairman, I will need to leave a few minutes early as well, but not noon, probably 5 of.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Trent Santee.
Here.
Monty Sokup here. There are 9 present, 3 absent, which establishes a quorum. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leah Roslin to read the intro to the meeting and the words about public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. I have a few housekeeping items for this hybrid meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you are not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. Unless you are participating during the meeting, please turn your video off. This allows the active meeting participants to be seen on screen. You will still be able to participate in the meeting. When you are participating, please turn your video on. If you have any trouble, you can send me a chat. The city reserves the right to mute people or to turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. Now I'll make a few notes on public comment. When the chair calls for public comment, individuals attending in person should approach the podium to indicate that they wish to speak. The podium can be raised or lowered, and we encourage you to use this feature to ensure your comments are heard. Individuals participating via Zoom should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. Please leave your virtual hand raised until you are called on. Individuals will be called on in the meeting that they appear on the meeting host screen. Please state your name before speaking. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Thank you, and now I'll turn the meeting back over to Mr. Sokup.
Thank you, Leah. At this time, we're going to open it up for public comment. I have no one in the chamber. Is there anybody online? I don't see anyone online. With that, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move on to agenda item B, approve the minutes of the August 14th meeting. I would accept a motion and.
I move that we accept the meetings as the minutes as submitted.
I'll second that. I have a comment. We've got Edith on there as absent. I thought she resigned. It's no big deal. I think.
Yeah, this is Leah Roslin, Affordable Housing Administrator. She did resign, and she's removed from the role now, but that was the only ability we had within the system that we use to indicate she's not present.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And do I have was that a second?
Yes.
From Mark? Okay. So any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call a vote. I'm going to read you in the same order that I read the roll. So minutes, Karen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Nicholas, oh, sorry, Mark Nicholas absent. Phil,
Yeah.
Mark,
Yes.
Christina,
Approve.
Erica, oh, Mark there, Shannon,
Abstain.
Thomas,
Approve.
Trent,
Yes.
Monty, yes. Motion passes 8-0 with one abstention. So with that, we will move on to the regular agenda. Receive presentation on revised draft plan for the home and ARP funds. Aaliyah, I think I turned that over to either you or Danny.
This is Leah Roslin, Affordable Housing Administrator. We have Brad Carr here to present that to the board.
Oh, we have Brad online. Sorry,
Good
Brad.
morning, board members. Brad Carr, I'm the Community Development Analyst in the Housing Initiatives Division of Planning and Development Services. We want to thank you for the opportunity today to present our revised version of the city's Home American Rescue Plan Act allocation plan. As you may recall, the initial draft version was presented to the public at your February 13th, 2023 meeting. The city's consultant provided a presentation and the initial draft of our allocation plan. After submission of the plan to HUD for review, they've asked us to make some revisions and to avoid any potential fair housing problems. And so today's public hearing is to present to the community our revised plan and to provide a forum for the public to comment on the plan before it's resubmitted to HUD. The revised plan is attached to your agenda today, and it no longer includes the preference for single females, as that was viewed by HUD as a potential fair housing violation. The preferences for households with children and chronically homeless individuals and families, that remains in the plan, as both of those align with the unmet needs and gaps in services that we identified through the homeless needs assessment. The recommendation to utilize our HOME-ARP funds for the development of affordable housing has not changed in this revised version of the plan. The public comment period on this revised version began on August the 29th and will run into September 13th. At that time, then we will proceed on to the City Commission for their final approval at their September 19th meeting. There is no action required by you today for this public hearing, but we would like to open up the opportunity for the public to comment and answer any questions that you or other community members have about our revised plan.
Yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
Do I need to?
I think all you need to do is talk.
Oh, okay, great. Shannon Lowry, Housing Authority. Is there an outside limit that we have to either obligate and or spend these ARPA funds?
Time period you're talking? So it was the initial allocation, and Danny, she's there in the room, she might have to correct me, but the initial allocation, they had us amend our 2019 plan, I believe.
I think it was 2020.
So it was the CDBG-CV was probably the 19. So the HOME-ARP was probably the 2020 plan. And then from there, I believe we have 7 years to spend the funds.
Yep.
Thank you.
Smonty Sokup, one other question. Was the objection due to the reference to female because that's a protected class?
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
So could we have left, I'm just curious, and I'm not asking that we change, could we have left in single family or single income families? Is that allowable language, or would it be in the future? Or do you know?
So families in this sense are thought of in several different ways. It can be a one-person family, or you could have a multiple-person family. And so by using the terms that we have tried to keep in the plan for households with children, and then for chronically homeless individuals and families. And so that way we're trying to cover all of the qualifying populations as whether they're a single family or a multiple individual family. As far as adding income in, all of the qualifying populations, this does relate directly to homeless individuals, those fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, or other populations where they potentially are at a greater risk of becoming homeless. So HUD is assuming all of those are at or below the 30% of our median area income.
Thank you, Brad. Any other questions? Any recommendations? Okay, with that, I don't think there's any action to be taken. Is that correct, Leah?
No action. If we could just ask if there is any public comment either in the room or online.
Okay.
Yeah,
Phil, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a couple of just informational questions under the HOME-ARP production housing goals. I'm not sure I'm exactly in the right place, but I had a question about how we got to per unit costs of 180K and how that term unit was defined. Am I in the wrong place here?
What page you on?
Well, I just took out a couple. I have HOME-ARP allocation plan draft was what I had in my notes. And there was a subsection HOME-ARP production housing goals where a per unit cost of approximately 180K was brought up, and that's how they got somewhere between 19 and 38 units with a per unit cost of 180K. And I was just trying for my own purposes to understand where those numbers came from.
And so are you talking about page 35 of that report?
I am, yes.
The HOME-ARP production
Yes.
housing goals.
I can kind of take a stab at that. So we actually used some of the applications that had been submitted to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board in your last round of funding by some YTech developers. And their pro formas are very detailed of what they have to submit to the state of Kansas to receive those low-income housing tax credits. And so we presented those numbers to the city's consultant. The city's consultant kind of crunched the numbers for us and determined those ranges that if we provided anywhere from a 20 to 40% subsidy of the per unit cost to a developer, then that would equate out to that dollar amount per unit, and then determine that we could hopefully build a range between 19 and 38 units at that level for the about $1.4 million that we have available.
Okay. I think that's probably as clear as we can make it, so that works for me.
This is still just an allocation draft plan, and so if this is accepted by HUD, then we would put out a much more detailed RFP asking for proposals from developers, and at that time is where we would really be able to get in and dig deep into the actual numbers of what they're proposing.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, then we are going to move on to agenda item C2, which is receive instructions on review and scoring of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund applications. And I believe Leah is going to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint. So first, I'm going to go over a brief PowerPoint presentation, just as a reminder and a review regarding prioritization of applications based on the AHAB's NOFO. And then I'll go into looking at the actual scoring matrix, walk through that so all members are in a common understanding of how to complete that and submit that. So I will bring up the PowerPoint. Oh, goodness. I wonder if there's a way to...
Just hit the green share button on your Zoom.
I'm sorry, the what?
The green share button on your Zoom.
Oh, thank you.
Right in the middle in the center.
Yeah, I was actually, yes, thank you.
It's always one of those buttons. That'll work.
There you go.
Okay. So here's a reminder of the timeline. Once the applications are received on Friday or by Friday, September 15th, which is when the applications are due, I will begin preparing documents for the Affordable Housing Advisory Board review. The AHAB will review all the applications, the key elements projects chart, and the scoring matrix for each project no later than by Friday, October 29th, to be submitted ahead of the October 9th meeting. That will allow the AHAB a week to review all applications prior to the meeting. Please do read every application and come prepared with questions by the October 9th meeting. That will be the board's opportunity to ask questions of the applications before scoring and making funding recommendations. Each member of the AHAB must submit their individual application scores and funding recommendations to me no later than October 30th, as shown on the timeline. That's when your scores and recommendations are due via email to me. The cumulative recommendations will be included in the November 13th agenda packet and to be used for discussions to make funding recommendations. Just going to pause. Any questions?
Leah, I do have a question.
Yes.
Okay, to jump in.
Please.
So those two meetings, the October 9th and the November 13th, I assume there are some of us that will likely be linked to an application that we can't participate in talking about the grant applications. Should we not show up to those two meetings? And if so, how many people do we have left that actually will get to weigh in?
That is correct. You'll need to recuse yourself from any discussion, including the presentations on the project. And at this time, I have not received the applications, so I can't give an indication. I have some assumptions based on about who may need to recuse themselves, but I'm not certain. That is an issue that we... Go ahead.
On those two meetings, is it the entirety of the meeting that will be that we need to recuse ourselves from, those of us that may or may not be connected to an application there, or is it that we need to show up for the meeting and then recuse ourselves for a portion of that conversation and then rejoin the meeting? Just trying to schedule.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If in the past, members have showed up and then made a formal declaration that they are recusing themselves and logged off at that time. So if you're comfortable.
Yeah. So Karen, typically those are the only agenda items we have. So once you show up and be counted present and recuse yourself so you don't miss the meeting, you would be excused for the rest of the meeting. We wouldn't need you probably to come back.
Okay.
Does that make
sense? Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
But we're not required to log off. I mean, we can watch.
You can watch. It's a public meeting.
Yeah, it's a public meeting.
It's a public meeting. You can watch. You just
comment
can't.
And I'll turn, I turn my camera off.
Right.
Or sit in the audience or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just not going to be able to act in the meeting.
Right.
Any other questions about the timeline?
Question, other than hearing the presentation and asking questions, that's the only activity that will be occurring that day, right?
Correct.
There'll be no formal decisions or anything? Okay.
Correct. Yeah, the formal recommendations come on the Monday, November 13th meeting. Ready to move on? Okay. When reviewing the applications, please make sure that the projects align directly with one of the purposes outlined here in terms of what is allowable for affordable housing trust funds. So providing and improving the quality, availability, and affordability of housing in Lawrence, acquiring land for future affordable housing, and investing in public-private partnerships for the provision of affordable housing. Any applications that do not meet the parameters of one of the following allowable projects that are listed here will be screened out by me ahead of time and will not be reviewed by the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. So again, the allowable projects align directly with the trust fund purpose and the AHAB goals that the board has set forth. So the allowable projects include affordable housing or land acquisition, new affordable housing development, rehab of affordable housing for preservation of existing affordable housing stock, accessibility modifications, housing vouchers, projects that increase community awareness on affordable housing, and projects that advance racial equity in housing.
Leah, can I ask a question?
Please.
Just a probing question. So this is from last year's experience. Will there be discussion on any applications that are not complete? So we had embedded into each application where the applicant were to answer to each of these structured questions, but we had quite a bit of conversation to one that did not complete and fill the application. Would that be a repeat this year?
Thank you for that question, Christina. No, since that happened, I added a statement on the NOFO stating that incomplete applications would not be reviewed by the board. So moving forward after that, those will not be provided to the board for review either.
Okay, thank you, Leah.
Yeah.
So we won't see them?
Correct.
So that decision's made by you?
Well, incomplete applications are not accepted.
Yeah, but you're making that call. Somebody has to make it. I'm just asking who.
Yeah, I mean, based on if their application is not complete.
Okay.
It's not a subjective determination, I guess.
Does that mean if they leave any question blank?
Yes, if the application is not complete, then it will not be reviewed. I, of course, will follow up, and if time allows, give an opportunity for that applicant to complete the application.
Okay, great.
But yeah, the expectation is that the applications are fully complete to be considered for funding.
So applications have been submitted already, I assume.
To date, no applications.
Oh, they all kind of wait till the last minute.
Typically, yes.
Okay. So I was going to ask you if we could pre-look, but there's nothing to pre-look at. Okay, so if your deadline's the 5th, how are you going to follow up on the 6th and say, what about number 12?
It's the 15th.
Or what, you know what I mean, whatever the deadline is.
Yes. As soon as I receive it,
You'll do what you can to bring all the submissions to us as completed.
Absolutely. I mean, our priority and value is that we want to see all projects come forward and give every applicant a chance to have a competitive review.
I'm asking because these are where complaints come from. That I didn't get a fair shot. Well, why didn't you? Well, I didn't do my job. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so in terms of once you receive the applications and begin to review and prioritize them, here are the general parameters, and then I'll go into more specifics. So as board members, again, review and evaluate project applications, prioritization should be made based on the following criteria. I will go into further detail on the prioritization listed in the NOFO and in the matrix in the upcoming slides. And want to note that while awards do not need to be prioritized solely based on the scores alone, the board does need to have rational and reasoned explanation for awards and should not be made based on personal opinions, political views, or personal preference. So the evaluation and prioritization criteria include the award prioritization is identified in the NOFO and voted and agreed upon by the board, the application matrix scores, the project timeliness, significance of funding gaps in the project, community need, and alignment with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund purpose. So in terms of evaluation criteria for all projects, the first is that it advances the Affordable Housing Advisory Board goals, and I've just listed the goals here in the bullet points. All projects also need to advance city strategic plan housing goals, specifically SWN goal number 5, SWN goal number 6, SWN goal number 7, in addition to alignment with additional city strategic plan goals, the consolidated plan, the downtown master plan, and Plan 2040. And those are all linked in the NOFO. In addition, all projects will be evaluated based on a strong commitment to racial equity and affirmatively furthering fair housing, the inclusion of priority populations that have been identified by the board and the city based on disparities that exist in access to safe, affordable, and accessible housing, meaningful neighborhood engagement and community outreach, the developer or the organizational capacity, and the area median income of the populations being served. In terms of evaluation for acquisition and development projects, further prioritization criteria will include expanding affordable housing to all Lawrence neighborhoods and areas of the city so that affordable housing is scattered and indistinguishable from market rate housing to the extent possible. The commitment to affordability and perpetuity, ensuring that the investment permanently increases affordable housing stock. Depending on specific projects, housing may be placed in permanent affordability through a deed restriction, the land trust, ground release, or another method acceptable to the city. All remaining equal projects with longer-term affordability will be prioritized over projects with shorter-term affordability of 30 or fewer years. Third, a sustainability commitment. The City of Lawrence strategic plans includes several goals aimed at increasing environmental sustainability and reducing Lawrence's contribution to climate change and preparing for the effects of climate change. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund is committed to ensuring its funding supports green and sustainable design components, including native landscaping and strong energy efficiency measures that are above code, solar-ready homes, and construction over over demolition, and encourages recipients to implement these measures in funded projects. And then further, number 4, community need is identified in the 2018 Lawrence Housing Market Analysis. And then further prioritization for acquisition and development will include infill development, the cost per bedroom or person, the number of units created, the leverage, developer fees or percentage, distance to transit, distance to green space and recreation, distance to schools, and distance to the nearest grocery store. Any questions so far?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You, under your discussion of, affordability and length of time, you mentioned ground lease. Do we have any examples of that particular mechanism being used in the context of affordability?
I'm going to look to Jeff.
Excuse me, Thomas Howell, Lawrence Board of Realtors representative. My understanding is that's what Tenants, the Lawrence Community Land Trust, they own the ground, and they lease, that's a ground lease back to the owner of the improvement. And so there's a ground lease that is inactive.
Well, she mentioned the land trust as a separate item, so I didn't know if that was what I thought I heard her say. So, yeah, I'm familiar with that mechanism, but I thought perhaps there was something in addition to the tenants model.
Yeah, there is. This
Okay.
is Shannon Lowry, Housing Authority. I believe both the Housing Authority and Burt Nash, I know for sure the Housing Authority. You have a 99-year lease from the county on the property that the cottages is built on. And I believe that the transitions, Burt Nash's house is also handled in that way. So the county owns the entire parcel of that property, and we have 99-year leases on them.
I'd like to talk with you at greater length. Yeah, I don't need to do it right now, but I'm curious about that mechanism. So, okay, thanks.
Okay. I am going to go through the review matrix, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, just to show these are the categories, the total evaluation categories used in the scoring matrix for acquisition and development, for a total points possible of 200. And then for housing supports, rehab, and modification, these are all the categories used to score and prioritize those projects. Again, with a total points possible of 200. And then to Karen's earlier question, AHAB members shall not participate in the discussions or voting regarding any applications if they have a conflict of interest or substantial conflict of interest on one of the applications. And if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to ask me offline, or if there are any additional questions right now, I'm happy to take those. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the scoring matrix. So I just want to walk through this, particularly for members who have not participated in this process before. I have just done two examples of projects here in the matrix. Sorry, I blew this up way too much. When you receive the materials from me, you will receive every project application, and you will also receive this Excel workbook from me. Right now, there's just two tabs for the projects, development and acquisition, and support services and modification. When you actually receive the spreadsheet, this would say the name of the applicant instead. So this would instead say Ad Astra Affordable Housing Provider, which is just something I made up. Similarly for here. So there will be a tab for every single project. I'm just going to move over here. So then this is the total list of recommendations. So what you'll do is go through the review matrix, compare that with the application, insert your scores, and then that information will be moved over here. So I'll just walk through an example. Also want to make sure that I'm clear on what will already be filled in versus what you will be filling in. So when you receive the spreadsheet, I will complete the applicant name, the project type, and I will insert the requested amount. Additionally, I will go ahead and insert scores for anything that is just sort of black and white objective information. So for example, I've filled in the AMI served, staff experience, et cetera, based on the responses in the application. Other answers and scores are more subjective, and that's when the AHAB members, you all will actually fill in your score. So for example, population served, the project responds to local community need, et cetera, et cetera. If you hover over into these little red triangles in the corner, you can see a pop-up, and that will give you the specific points so you don't have to review back to the NOFO, but you can see, okay, so there should be 4 points for each of the following priority populations that the project has served, and it lists those on the note there on the spreadsheet. This is a more subjective, even though the applicants will check off responses, that is will entail some board member evaluation as to whether those populations are affirmatively being served or whether it's simply a matter of non-discrimination. And then further to help you find those responses on the application, I've put section 3, question 2 on the application, so you can see specifically where you should be referring to the application to see the response. So you can fill that in. That will already be filled in. Neighborhood and community engagement, again, that will be filled in, or you will use you can hover over, look at how you should be assigning points, and it can be on a scale, so it doesn't necessarily have to be 0, 5, or 10. Those are just sort of the benchmarks to guide you. So going through, again, many of these are objective questions. You can look at the response in terms of racial equity and inclusion, their financial information, leverage will be filled in, and I will actually note the percentage of leverage that they're bringing in, cost per bedroom, objective, I will state here in the right-hand column what exactly that is, the developer fee, I'll put that response in, so it's just very clear, length of affordability, et cetera, et cetera. So then you'll come to a total score at the bottom, and then here's where you can insert any of your individual comments or recommendations for that specific project. All the scores and the worksheets are a matter of public record, so whatever you put in terms of comments and recommendations, again, is for public record. So then you will do the same thing for every project. So you can see similar for, this is an example for an accessibility modification project. You can go in and put in your scores for the different things. Similarly, you can hover over and see what the points should be, the scale. Put in the scores. They're slightly different, but fairly similar. So admin fee as opposed to developer fee, long-term stabilization as opposed to length of affordability, cost per household as opposed to cost per bedroom, et cetera. There are more subjective questions on this in terms of what constitutes low barrier services, what constitutes active collaboration, if they're adequately meeting community need, if they're providing trauma-informed services, et cetera. So you'll fill that in, come to a total score, and again, you'll have the opportunity to put in any comments or recommendations. So you'll do that for every single project application. Then over here, you can see that it's been moved over, and this is where you will insert your individual recommendation for funding. And so this might be a discussion that the board would like to have either now or in an upcoming meeting in regards to values regarding fully funding projects and zeroing out others versus underfunding requests in order to fund more projects. But if you want to recommend funding $450,000, then you can fill that in there, again there, fill that in there. And you can see that here at the bottom, you'll be able to tell how much you have remaining to allocate and what your total allocation is. It is very helpful if members do reach a zero a balanced budget. So if you get to 0 in remaining, that really helps when then I average all the so when I present it, when the board is making recommendations, I show what the average or the mean is for the recommended amount that's each project is funded. And then you can enter any brief notes here. I'm almost done. Just want to show you the key project elements chart. This is sort of the key information that the board has stated that you all would like to see in one easy spreadsheet. So you can also go over here and see sort of that basic information that is being looked at if you have any questions about those items. So are there any questions about how to review and score and submit your recommendations for funding?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
There may be, I haven't done this before, so I'll probably find out my question doesn't make any sense. But there may be projects that might not be able to happen unless they're fully funded. Has that ever been the case? Probably, I'm guessing.
So typically in our previous NOVOs, we've asked the question, what happens if your project isn't fully funded?
So I'll learn that.
So what they'll tell if it's a scalable or if it's not or whatever. So I think we still have that in there.
Okay.
So that's information we'll get.
So some projects, if they get 90% of it, they can get 20 things satisfied instead of 24.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
I would just say this is probably the best matrix and process we've had to date. It may not be perfect, but it's by far better than what we've been using. So I thank you, Leah, for leading the charge on that. I know everybody's
Absolutely.
work here as well.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 meetings to get through that or something, but I think it's well worth it. So
Yeah, I strongly agree with it. Having been here since, like,
Beginning.
the very
Inception.
first meeting, we are, finally, I think we have something that's workable and doesn't leave the board sort of trying to guess is it exactly, and I know it took a lot of hard work to
Scratching
get
the
here,
head.
but I do think we will end up with a much better product.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for your incredible work.
Okay. Is that the end of your presentation?
Yeah, unless there are any other questions,
Thank
that's
you,
it.
Leah. That was very helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're on to item C3, which is review 5-year affordable housing advisory board strategies and consider approving goals 6 and 7 that we've worked on previously in several meetings. So I think since we started with 6 and 7, I think let's look at 6 and 7 if we can agree that those are acceptable the way we modified them the last time. Then I would suggest we move on to 5 and work our way backwards to 1. So let's start with goal 7. That's all right.
Oof.
Oh, great, you got it up there. So we worked on this last time. So it's increasing community awareness on engagement in affordable housing. Our output goal is 5 affordable housing community engagement programs in 5 years. Hopefully, we'll see some of these in the NOFA process that will get us a start. I think the idea generally in 5 years was that we would have some ongoing program in every year of funding. It was kind of the hope with that. There could be more, obviously.
So I wasn't here at the last Shannon
Okay.
Housing Authority. But when I saw this, I also know that I have done extensive work with Brad and Danny on the affirmatively furthering fair housing plan. And part of what that requires is that we do some fair housing training and some landlord training. And I wondered if we couldn't put that in here also, because I really do think those two things go hand in hand. I mean, I think huge steps were taken with the source of income resolution, and I think, I mean, we still get quite a bit of engagement about that issue, but I kind of wonder if we can't put that in here.
And there's still a lot of misunderstanding about that too, from the people that have rental property that I run into from time to time, because they heard it from somebody that heard it from somebody that said they can't do anything anymore, you know? So yes, agreed.
And I think we could just add,
As a strategy, you think?
well, yeah, and, you know, community engagement on, you know, fair housing.
This is Christina Gentry. I agree with that. I do recognize that the meeting that you were in attendance with, we had talked about earmarking 90,000. Maybe I'm thinking of an incorrect number, but we had talked about earmarking funds to produce another a housing, either to support a project that looks to collaborate in gathering data and looking for maybe an outside consultant. That wasn't really sussed out how that would be done, but we had voted against that. Is it some way that we are understanding how are these trust funds going to be used to support these increased community awareness engagements? Is the city supporting that financially, or is this coming from trust funds dollars? Are we allocating, are we looking at actively funding this kinds of outreach? Because someone's doing that work. And so is this volunteer? Is this being supported by the city ARPA? I'm just asking a question, if we know that answer, about how we support that work intentionally with fiscal opportunities.
And again, Shannon Howery Housing Authority, I mean, we engage in this work. We've done landlord symposiums to try to do this. We are trying to plan another one. So we do it. I know the city has done it at times, through Human Relations, I believe, has done some. So, but as far as
So I think at this point, I think we're relying on someone to come and respond to the NOFA.
And so
to
where do we see
get
those proposals coming from?
Funding. Well, it could come from the Housing Authority, it would be one.
us,
Could be from the city staff to, like if they wanted like the report that Christina's talking about, if they wanted funding for a housing study, that could come in through the NOFA process as opposed to being earmarked. And then it would get weighted against every other proposal that comes in. I don't know if we've communicated that clearly in the NOFA. I'm not 100% sure of that, but
Well, where would that fall with respect to your all scoring matrix? I mean, we've got development acquisition, and then we've got support. Where does it fall under the support?
I think it'd have to fall under the support because it's not acquisition and construction.
well, and this is, maybe somebody could put a pin in this to ask legal staff, but when's the renewal of the sales tax?
About 4
5,
years.
yeah.
And what will be able to be done as far as supporting that as we get closer? Because I don't know that we could use trust fund money to support a political election.
No, probably not.
And so, I mean, I just think we want to be real careful about where we're thinking about that.
Mhm.
And the difference between the need for affordable housing and, hey, vote for the sales tax.
Right?
But, okay.
So for this is Christina Gentry. So for these strategies, for this goal, we are expecting that an applicant will come through with something that speaks directly to community engagement. Is that correct? It's just not an internal goal or strategy that we are trying to produce, but we hope that community engagement comes from the applicants for 2024 or 2023.
I think if there's funding needed, yes.
Okay.
Would be my take on that. That doesn't mean that this body can't, put on an affordable housing forum of some kind if we chose to do that. It doesn't mean we couldn't do that. But I think if you want funding out of the trust fund, the NOFO is the process of getting funding. Not everything here would have to be funded. I mean, I think part of our support is through, and the question in the application is, what are you doing to engage the community and support your project? I think that's part of it. That's part of getting the word out and including that in as a question that's ranked in the application.
Sure. Thank you for that clarification. Just wanted to know what was our labor and our charge, what we're asking of others to contribute.
Yeah.
Making clarification on that.
And again, if we don't see anything that comes out of the, first round or second round, we may have to go, look, if we're going to meet this, we're going to have to do something, we're going to have to take a more active role. I mean, that could be a possible outcome of, around a NOFO funding if we get nothing and we're not happy with what our applicants are doing.
And that active role might be just promoting the idea that here's what we're looking for, because I'm not sure how that's getting done at this point. I'm not sure.
Right.
I mean, and if it's not promoted, then how do potential recipients of this or potential community groups who could do this work, how do they hear about it? How do they know that this is a possibility?
Right. Well, we have 3 very active not-for-profits that know and hear about this. And if we don't get anything from our applicants, we might be reaching out to them to go, Shannon, what does this look like? How can you help us in this arena? And what kind of funding would you need in the next, we may have that discussion at the next round, before the next round.
Yep. Good.
So I see us taking a role in that sense. It's probably not, there's some work that we'll have to do, but we're not going to carry the water on that, probably.
This is Leah Roseland.
As a volunteer board.
Yeah, just to follow up, and maybe the implicit question is, that's part of my role, is to reach out to potential applicants. And I've actually had several meetings with community organizations and community nonprofits interested in exploring this goal specifically, as well as the other goals.
Great.
But also, as Monty stated, the board can greatly assist with reaching out to folks that I might not have relationships with, and encourage as well.
How could we help you with that? There are 3 or 4 groups that I know of that care about it from time to time, complain about it. Home builders, realtors, landlords, all have organizations. Do you get a chance to talk to them from time to time, I assume?
This is Leah Roseland. I do. And I know that, like I had put in an email to you, the specific organizations that I had reached out to in terms of notice for the NOFO, and the Home Builders is one, the Chamber of Commerce was another one, as well as a number of other organizations. But also we have representatives from all of those organizations that you named on the board. Right. And so my hope is that members will be taking that information back to those organizations and their members, and providing linkages to the process and to me when appropriate. And if there's other recommendations for how we can better be outreaching or working with any businesses or organizations, I'm happy to take those recommendations.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move us on from that. I think we would need to see the fair housing bullet language added to this and bring it back, so I don't think we can approve it today. But whatever you come up with, I think next time we see this, maybe we can just approve it if we are in agreement with the fair housing. Is that a fair statement? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to goal 6 then. Increase racial equity in housing. The output goal is 5 racial equity housing programs in 5 years. Again, I think the output goal there was to say that we need to have, in our NOFO process, we need to see one positive, active program that's addressing this issue. Personally, I struggled with the output goals as to how we would say what that is or what it looks like. So we just want to make sure we have one at least one of our programs, addressing this annually, so we continue to push on this matter.
And when we say program, what are we referring to?
Well, I think it's, that's a good question. I think it could be program, project. Maybe program's not a great word. I'm not saying we need to establish a new program every year. Just that something needs to be moving forward every year to push this goal, that we have something, something actively occurring that helps forward this goal.
So do you assume that you're looking?
It could be a program.
That you're looking at it post hoc and saying, this particular project that we funded has a racial equity component to it that helps push this goal forward? A particular project.
Pick your element in that project,
Yeah,
or something.
the project that you awarded funds to moves this goal forward.
I think that's one possibility. It could be an educational program that somebody comes forward with, one of our not-for-profits, that says, we're going out to this community to try to educate them about what the opportunities are in the affordable housing realm. It could be many things. I don't know what those things are. Okay. But those are, I think, two examples. It could be a specific project, or it could be a program that reaches out to specific populations.
Okay.
I'm open to certainly anyone's input or ideas or wordsmithing on that. I just,
This is one of those hard things that I wish I knew how to do
right.
without running afoul of fair housing. And
Right.
I would love for us to figure that out.
This is Christine.
Well, again, go ahead. Go ahead, Christina.
No, well, I just I'm looking at increasing community awareness and engagement. And so when I think about increasing community awareness, I'm thinking about bringing to light some of the past and histories. And so making restorative efforts to look into those policies, those restrictive covenants, those ones that are specific to Lawrence, so that people understand, or there is, increased community awareness, not people understand, I'm going to use my words very carefully, but there is a community awareness component to that, wherein we are speaking specifically to Lawrence and to how their outcomes have either decreased or increased opportunities for there to be racial equity embedded into the framework of housing opportunities for people experiencing lack of affordable housing. Not just lack of affordable housing, I think the component too to be very careful with and to be clear is the ambiguous language that was previously used in some of the policies, and to bring to light increased community awareness of what those outcomes have been, the unintentional outcomes of racial equity in housing, and so to constantly drive that needle home and to make that a priority educational opportunity and to increase community awareness, because I feel like there's a lot of othering in the scope of housing, as if Lawrence does not do that. Lawrence does not participate in this. This is not how Lawrence has shown up in spaces, and we have history and documented history that proves otherwise.
Right.
So I feel like continuing the community awareness about that component can raise an awareness and say, yes, indeed we did, and this is what we're going to do to restore those practices going forward.
Okay, so are you suggesting we're missing a strategy?
Yeah, well, yes, I would.
To educate about the unequal housing opportunities that have, historic unequal housing opportunity, or unequal housing practices, whatever that word is.
Right, I said a lot of words there. This is Christina.
Right.
So I feel like, just like we were talking about in our future discussions, the outcomes of raising taxes and increasing property taxes, we continue talking about the outcomes that have produced displacement or a great number or data that reflects demographics in certain areas of Lawrence, because it's not just because they're rental properties and they're affordable that people are living there. There have been structures that have been reproduce over time that say that people were not allowed to live or own property here. So the outcomes and that data and kind of understanding like this is where the populations are segregated in the space of Lawrence would be something I think would be notable. That would be ongoing, and I don't know what that looks like, but that's maybe a strategy to consider and to place in to our next opportunities to speak on strategies.
Okay, I think that sounds like a reasonable thing to add to me as a strategy.
Is it? Okay, I'm glad.
I think so. No, I think, an educational component, understanding where we came from and how we got here is important to how to correct the problem or have an impact on the problem. And people need to understand that in order to understand some of the actions we may be taking to try to rectify that.
Sure, and we can, continue to work on that strategy, but I think it's something to put to note here today.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. Is it okay if I just do a couple of checks for understanding with the recommendations that have been made?
To do what?
A couple checks for understanding. On the 2 new strategies that have been recommended, I want to make sure that I'm accurately reflecting those. And the word I used in both was provide. The previous discussion on the AHAB was that it would not be the AHAB role to actually lead those engagement forums or educational opportunities, but rather to support. And so if I could get some clarity and guidance on sort of the verbiage to use for the new recommended strategies, that would be helpful.
I don't want to speak for the whole board, but I'll take a shot at this.
Try.
I think we could say support, but with the same caveat like we did on if it's not happening, then I think we're going to have to take a more positive, if we get this first round of NOFA, which is coming in October, right? It's really soon. If we don't see the kinds of outcomes or impacts that we want to see, we may need to take a more active role, and this may become provide as opposed to support. Does that seem reasonable?
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I'm hoping that some of this will come out of, Shannon, I'm going to pick on you. The Housing Authority sees this opportunity and they go, hey, we need $20,000 to provide this kind of outreach program in this space. But to do that, we need funding to staff it and do that. And that comes to us in a NOFO either this year or next year or whatever. But I'm hoping that we have groups, outside groups, probably are not-for-profits that come forward and to live in that space and help us with that.
Thank you.
If not, we'll figure something else out because it's a goal that we have. So, okay.
And
All right, so let's come. Oh, go ahead.
And have I adequately captured Christina and Shannon's comments for the 2 new strategies recommended?
Hold on a second, is it here?
I can't see.
One second.
Oh, sorry. Here, I'll share screen.
Yeah, thank you. Come on over here.
My eyes are good, but not that good.
Leah, I support the language.
Okay, thank you, Christina.
Well, doesn't the second point, doesn't that relate to Goal 6 rather than Goal 7? The support education on historical and current, doesn't that go under Goal 6, or am I missing something?
Yeah, I thought.
We're working on 6.
Yeah, I thought that was.
She has it
Oh.
there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The language in 7, I agree.
That the last bullet,
No,
the
no,
last
just-
bullet there.
Just this one?
Goes into 6,
Goes
not
into
7.
6, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So 7,
Good catch.
this is good for 7.
Catch that either?
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so if we're in agreement on this, then I think we could approve this one and be done with, at the moment, for 6. Are we in agreement, consensus, that, I don't think we have to take a vote. Are we in consensus?
Let's go.
I agree.
Okay. And mark this moment. Finished one goal. At least for the time being. No, we didn't finish 7 because she was going to work on
Oh, okay, she's gonna work on
language,
7.
I think.
6
If
is-
we're okay with that language,
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure if we captured it
Yeah.
accurately.
We do.
Okay, so on strategy 7, are we okay with the language on strategy 7?
We're good.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm good with it.
Okay. Anybody online? I can't, I'm not looking online there. Sorry.
Did they all follow us? I mean, we kind of moved
Yeah.
pretty fast there.
Okay, so if we have consensus on 7, then we're going to move on to 4, or 5. I'm sorry, 5. I was ready to turn the page there. Okay, residents in unstable housing situations have more permanent, affordable, and supportive housing options. Our goal is for 50 tenant-based rental assistance vouchers in 5 years from 2023 to 2028. I am unclear as I read that, Leah. Is that 50 a year, or is that 50 over 5 years, so 10 a year?
50 over 5 years.
So that's 10 a year.
And let me ask this question, Shannon, with the Housing Authority. Currently, the trust funds half of our New Horizons project, which are homeless vouchers for families in the shelter. We currently have 13 of those that are active. And
So
then,
annual?
well, just, I mean,
We
the
have 13
problem
people
with,
in the pipeline.
well, we have 13 people currently using a voucher.
Okay.
The problem is that if I have a family of 8, that's a very different amount of money than if I have a family of 2. So it's not like I have 10 vouchers. It's like I have X amount of money, and whoever's next on the top of the list gets the voucher, and whether that costs me $1,000 or $500 depends on the size of that family. And then the home program, which is a different program, right?
Is the city funding outside of what we do, is it elastic? Is it budgeted every year? Is it $2? You have a feel?
There's no city funding for vouchers other than the home funds, which come to the city and then are passed through, I guess is the best
Okay,
way, to
so
the Housing Authority.
help me understand, how much last year did you have to?
The current year, we're like 290,000?
Sounds right.
You remember the year before? Just,
270 probably?
okay, so around 250,000.
Oh, yeah, somewhere
Okay.
between 250 and 3.
Okay.
For the whole time I've been here, except that 1 year. So,
So is that meeting our goal, or are
Yes,
two
I
people
think-
doing the job of one?
Yeah, I think this is okay because I think it continues what we're doing.
Okay.
You can always ask for more. This is
Right.
what we want to,
I just didn't
and-
know if we were trying to
Sure.
generate programs. I mean,
No,
because
I don't think so.
New Horizons was a new program specifically targeted to get families out of the shelter,
Okay.
right? It was
Right,
very,
and it's been a great program.
yeah. And home is anybody who is homeless, families, individuals, whoever. So,
Okay.
And one has federal strings and one does not.
which is better for me, but I'm just saying.
Then we okay with 5?
Do you know, I wonder if we should actually add to the strategy to continue to fund the Horizons program. Is that too specific if we did that, or
Well, then how am I, why do I
why would you
fill out
come
the
in and fill out the
application every
application?
year? And-
Okay,
and
so we need to keep
somebody
it
else
open.
Eventually might want
Right.
a
Oh.
voucher.
Right,
They don't, because it's a lot of hassle, but,
right.
And there may be another name for another program, and,
Yeah,
yeah.
this leaves it open.
Yeah, leave it open. My opinion.
Okay, are we okay with 5?
I would like more context on recommending strategies to enforce source of income non-discrimination ordinance. What could be our influence there? What does that look like? Does that look like continuing to talk with, or have conversation with the HRC? Does that mean like continuing to talk with legal? Give me an idea of what that strategy could look like in action.
This is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing. And is it okay if I?
Yeah, go ahead.
That is a strategy in the housing and homelessness community plan, A Place for Everyone, is to recommend strategies to enforce source of income non-discrimination ordinance. And so there's a work group being formed through the affordable housing group. And so I might suggest that an AHAB member or members participate in that work group.
Should we make that the strategy for AHAB to participate in that work group? Maybe that would be more direct.
Beef in it, yeah.
Yeah.
For me.
Go.
Yeah.
Give other
Isn't
ideas.
the next phase of what's happening is somebody's going to, with the city, talk about an enforcement strategy? Because when it was adopted, doesn't it kind of lack
Enforcement.
that piece? And so I don't know what a committee can do other than to maybe work on some language or something, but
Well, maybe our strategy is to stay involved in city discussions on that or something like that. Like be involved in that committee or be involved in other discussions.
We're talking about the recently passed ordinance, right?
Right,
Okay. I think outreach is really important with the three groups I mentioned before, especially the landlords. New rules, new law, new understanding. I mean, I was at one hearing, and some of you all were too, and I thought the information was good, given to the public. I think some of them listened, some of them didn't, but that's pretty normal. So, and I do think the city has an obligation, the city, not us, has an obligation to make people aware of laws they pass, and that's what that is. So, just like speeding on residential streets, is that you see what I mean? It's kind of in their bailiwick.
so maybe Leah can give us some better idea about what this committee is attempting to do?
Yeah, this is Leah Roseland, and to clarify, so similarly to the way that it moved through the first time, there was the AHAB made the recommendation to the HRC, who formed a work group, and I participated in that work group, as did Christina, and the members of community organizations and the Human Relations Commission, and made some recommendations for the source of income non-discrimination ordinance. And additionally, the original recommendations did include recommendations for enforcement strategies. The city determined to at first just take on the adoption of the source of income non-discrimination ordinance and not tackle the enforcement measures. And so what we're envisioning was then picking up sort of the second part of the work and working with the city manager's office, legal, et cetera, if the commission is interested then in reviewing those enforcement measures that are actually already in recommendation form, just need to take that additional step. So it would be a similar process working with the city in terms of those recommendations.
Okay, I'm going to take a stab at this. I'm going to say that our goal maybe should be to review and support the city's effort to study strategies to enforce support of income the non-discrimination. So we'd be reviewing that and supporting that effort.
I'm good with that, if others are.
Does that make sense? Did you catch that, Leah?
Did I get that?
The committee would review and support the city's effort to enforce,
Yep. That looks like.
to create, or city's effort to create strategies, or whatever you want to say.
This is policy. This is Christina Gentry. So are we looking at supporting policies or supporting a policy?
I think so. I think we're
We're supportive of the income discrimination ordinance, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
okay,
wanted to
so
clarify for
review and
language.
support the city's efforts to create policy to enforce source of income non-discrimination ordinance.
I don't know why we need policy in there.
I was driving home that it's more like a law, like it's like there has teeth in it, and the policy it was, I think, important language to use because it drives home it's not a choice. That this is like a strategy that also has been run through city legal and in supports in other places. We don't need to use policy, but I chose to use that word right now.
Okay. But there are other things we can't discriminate against that we have. Do we not have policy for that?
We do. As it
We do
relates
probably
to
have.
housing or as it relates to...
That's what, housing.
Well, I think that this goal number 5 will probably suss some of those other things out.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's not going to be our choice whether it's policy or not, but we can certainly. I'm okay with that
Okay
language.
with that.
Okay. Are we in agreement on number 5?
So ordered.
Consensus? See anybody
Yes.
online consensing? If that's a word. Okay.
It's a good word.
Move on to number 4. And I'm going to take a little break here. Leah, how much time do we really need to allot to this? I know we got a couple things on the agenda after this.
Yeah, well, we have 45 minutes left, and those are the items left on the agenda. So,
Yeah. You think we do one more and see where we are?
so far we've moved through them pretty quickly.
Okay. Well, let's move on to 4 then, and we'll reassess at the end of our discussion on 4. Just want to make sure we get out of here and keep us on track, so. Plus, I know you want to see this at the next meeting. So.
Right.
Okay, goal 4, residents living in poor conditions have improvements made. Our goal is 70 units in 5 years. So take a look at the strategies there.
Help me understand the third one, identify and leverage funding to achieve energy efficiency for affordable housing. Is this existing or new or?
So we actually have an agenda item on that
Yeah, I was gonna
today.
say
So there's a new energy program, solar energy program that
Okay.
came up, and we're gonna.
Does this
talk
relate
about
to
that.
community development block grants? Is that what, the weatherization program?
It could partially.
Could
I mean,
partially.
that is something that is funded.
I mean, that's one of the mechanisms that we use for,
Yes.
to create weatherization and energy efficiency.
Yes.
Right.
So there are some in place already, and then it's maybe encouraging new and, like
We are
what
currently-
Independence Inc. has done, things of those nature.
We're currently modifying that program. It was not
To be
necessary.
more in line with this?
Huh?
To be more in line with this?
To be more impactful
Good.
with the work that we're doing and to ensure that we're not just throwing weather stripping up, we're not just throwing attic insulation in, that we're actually doing energy audits. We're actually looking at what is the impact for the homeowner of the work that we're doing. So,
Great.
yeah, it's in a complete rehaul right now. So.
Yeah, good. And so I think that, if that's part of what we can help, identify and leverage, that's of good value.
Along those lines, do you anticipate as this program is reconfigured that the output goal that we have now, would you conceive of, I know that's only Ahab's fraction of it, but in general, would you see this reconfigured program increasing the availability of who gets the funding and how widely is it spread? Would you see it increasing under this reconfiguration?
No, actually, when looking at reconfiguring it, we are going to be able to assist less, but it will be a
More
larger
valuable.
impact.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because for, weather stripping, attic insulation, storm windows, we typically have about 35,000, 50,000 to work with. as you know, as you start really getting deep into energy audits, and we're looking at replacing HVACs, we're looking at replacing windows, all that stuff, that 50,000 is going to get,
Doesn't go very
Goes
far.
pretty
not going to
fast,
go anywhere,
yeah.
yeah. But the
Siding.
impact will be
Roof.
greater.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask something about bullet number 2, because I know the city's rental inspection program was adopted by the city commission, and that there's a whole department that does that. And so my question is, what value can we add?
That's a good question. I don't know.
This is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing Administrator. I just want to note that these strategies come directly, and I had it pulled up, come directly from the City of Lawrence Housing Market Analysis, Roadmap to Meet Dashboard Goals, recommendations. This is where I got those strategies, so I don't have opinions about the adoption of any of them, but this is what was recommended by the consultants in terms of those strategies.
I mean, and I don't remember the timing
They're doing that, though.
of, but I can't remember when their rental inspection was started.
I
But-
can. It was maybe 10, maybe 10 years.
Okay.
Could be.
Just a little bit before this
Yeah.
group started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the program just experienced a ordinance change about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where it evolved to its kind of its third iteration, and I can't remember the exact, if it was 2 or 3
But
years
it
ago.
expanded their duties, didn't shrink them.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think to Shannon's question, is that an area we need to be involved in and is a good use of this group's time?
I mean, we're not going to fund it, right? 'Cause the
We're not going to fund it.
We're not going to fund it. This is just recommending strategies to ensure that they keep doing what they're doing.
I mean, are we going to
I
take a
think
deep
that's the
dive
city
into that and
commission's-
study
Yeah,
that?
I don't think that's
Which I
us.
don't think we're going to do.
And that leads you to number 1. She's already describing that those modifications, I guess we could leave that like it is.
Well, I think
Yeah,
we
I mean,
do
she's
fund
gonna
some of
do
those because
that.
we have Independence Inc.
We
and
have, yeah.
a couple others that we have
Okay.
funded
Yeah,
those
Tenants,
kinds of
Homeowners.
things. So
And,
You want to remove 2 and approve it?
Yeah, I just don't know that we have anything to say about what they do.
This is
I don't think they're overlooking conditions, poor living I don't think they are.
This is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing Administrator. I do get a number of calls from residents concerned about the conditions of their rental units, and Jeff can speak to this more, but I guess a recommended strategy could be increasing funding, because my understanding is that with current staffing levels, perhaps that we could use some enhancement to be more proactive, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
You know, there's always a possibility with more staff that inspections can increase as part of that process. And part of the recent code change 2 or 3 years ago was to actually go from what was originally the ordinance for the inspection to actually following the International Property Maintenance Code. And so there's a bit of a more common code that they're following than the one that was initially there as part of the original ordinance about 10 plus years ago. So yeah, that is an option, is if, you know, the city commission would like to have a change in the frequency of inspections or the amount, that would necessitate probably more staff to carry out those inspections.
Yeah. I can certainly understand that. I don't know that we would be the funding source for that.
Right, that's
Well,
my.
not funding.
I thought we're,
Yeah.
But the notion that AHAB might want to make known to the city commission that they think improvements or level of effort in rental inspection is consistent with all the other goals that AHAB, you know, has, I don't think is a bad thing. I wouldn't think that the group would be in a funding position, but maybe in a policy recommendation position. Disregard that if you think it's stupid. I mean, I'm just talking. So.
well, I'm not sure we're going to be recommending strategies. I mean, that's what this,
Well, the only strategy I could see, Thomas, would be if we hear and don't think that the rental inspection program is robust enough, then our recommendation would be to make it more robust.
well, right, but that is like, we're gonna get a lot of complaints and then we might act. This is like, we're looking to affirmatively
Impact.
launch out in these areas. And
And that ain't our job on this.
yeah, and I'm like,
I probably led you down
Okay.
a rabbit hole. I apologize.
No, that's okay. We just talk around this whole thing. So people on Zoom have been quiet. So make sure we open an opportunity
Make sure they're
to
there.
jump in there if you want to jump in. My thought is that maybe we strike that or,
Just strike bullet 2 and
bullet 2 or change the wording so it's monitor or, I don't know, what. I just don't know. if we're gonna
I'd
jump in
recommend
that
we
arena.
strike it. I think,
I think we strike it. I mean, I think if
Okay.
we become aware of a very serious tenant problem, that something was going on, then we would send a letter to the city commission like we have done in the past as we become aware of very serious issues. Otherwise, I trust the professional staff to do their
To do
rental
that.
inspections in a way. I mean,
and they get those calls too.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that all of them then get routed to that department.
Okay. So are we okay with goal number 4 with strategies 1 and 3, which is now 2?
Sure.
yes.
Okay, consensus?
Yes.
Yes.
Thumbs up, everybody?
All right.
Yep.
All right. Okay, we did 4.
Hey.
Let's go to 3, or do you think we don't have enough time? Okay,
Yeah.
so we're going to stop there. Good work. We did 4, 5, 6, 7. We only have 3 left, so we're more than halfway, so this will come back. And I think Leah and I talked about this. We worked it from back to front because the first 3 were pretty straightforward, or more straightforward about providing housing and those kind of things. So,
And
Did
could I ask
change a
a
lot.
question about 1 for the staff?
sure.
It says in here, negotiate affordable for-sale unit creation as part of annexation for no less than 10%. Are we allowed to do that?
No. Well, you could.
We can't dictate it like with inclusionary zoning, but we can try to negotiate with developers that do that.
It's correct. You can have,
Negotiate. We
it can be
try.
conversations about it, but it can't be compelled as part of an annexation action.
Okay, because I was like, because negotiate to me is like,
It means
I'm
the two,
not going to give you this until you give me that, right?
Although we do dictate it.
No, that's not negotiation. That's something different, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
So it is tied to public incentives. So if you get a public incentive, there is a requirement.
Right, but
So-
you can build a park. So,
Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you for your work on that. Again, we'll bring those back to try to get through 1 through 3. So we are on to item C4, discussion on increasing property tax rates. I believe, is that right? Yes. Impact on housing affordability and review and consider letter to the taxing bodies. So Leah and I took a stab at crafting a letter, which was in the packet. Come on over. Certainly open to,
I have some comments on that.
yeah, okay, jump in there, Phil.
My first comment would be, is this really the right time for AHAB to weigh in? I mean, this year's budget's already cooked, and while you could make the argument that it doesn't hurt to make the point repeatedly, you can also make the counter argument that if you keep making the same daggone point, it's going to become noise pretty quickly. And that just looking at it from the outside, my advice would be that about February of next year, that AHAB comes out with a very strong and pointed statement to all 3 taxing jurisdictions that lays out what, you know, what we think should happen with respect to all the issues of property taxes and so forth, because that's when the budget starts cooking, and that's when I would think the potential impact might be greatest. That's how I see it.
This is Christina Gentry. I hear you on that. I also want to point, this is a particular noise I'd like to make, because this kind of lets us be in the space of continuing discussions about driving home the equity and some of the discussions that I don't know when the commission votes on this, if they haven't already. I haven't been reading Lawrence Journal World recently to see what those look like. But this is a continuing discussion, and since we are in the space of affordable housing, since we're talking in the space of creating more affordable housing, we also have to look at the implications on people to stay housed, and even an increase, I think, in this space it says, even those, or the fixed income and those single income families with children, an increase in property taxes, even a few $100s, can be significant. I think speaking to that and support, it continues to let our community know. We're engaged in this process. We're not just speaking from a board. We're speaking as individuals. I think this affects me as well. Being a new homeowner, I am going to see an increase of about $900 as across the board. I think it's going to affect everyone. But to speak on these issues is removing that ambiguous conversation. It doesn't happen. We understand taxes are significant. They are part of life.
Oh, yeah.
Right, I guess. But we're speaking to how the unintended impact or the intended impact has an effect on the people that we're looking to serve.
Mr. Chairman, speaking as a member of this board to the city commission about not spending money, I feel like a hypocrite, because the very dollars that we spend have been raised happily by the public. This is a much broader philosophical discussion about, in my opinion, getting more people paying taxes than we have. And if we continue to develop in the manner we're developing, if we count on infill to save our life, if we don't expand without overly restricting developers, then we will have fewer taxpayers. So I could talk for hours on this, but having been a county commissioner for 8 years and entertained budgets for 8 years, and generally they start in about June. Discussions about budgets start in June, and then statutorily they all vary a little bit, school board, county, city, but really by the time school starts, you're right, it's cooked, or it's pretty much cooked. So hearings occur in the summer on all this kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is our school districts rely solely on property tax and then payments from the state. Cities and counties, it's less of their budget. And all we care about as taxpayers is what it does to our property tax. I get it. I own one too. But there's, saying you didn't change your mill levy doesn't mean you didn't raise taxes. We know that math. That's not hard to do. But my point is, affordable housing, we're trying to get dollars and units and help to people that make less than many. And they lose every game. Every time milk goes up $1, every time taxes go up. We know that. And I believe the way to help stem that, again, this is a much wider philosophical discussion, is education and jobs. And I know that's tired. People are tired of that. But if we don't have more people paying taxes, creating home ownership and doing all those things, this problem is only going to get worse. And we can send any letter we want, but I feel like a hypocrite being a part of it. So
just for point of clarification, our tax is a sales tax, not property tax. We're not funded by property tax. I'm just,
Okay.
so that makes you feel a little better.
No, it doesn't. No, because that's more regressive than property
Right.
tax.
I get it.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
Shannon Oury, Housing Authority. I also feel a little bit conflicted about supporting this. Not that I support the property tax going up, but what I am aware of from the city's point is almost like they just put $2 million in a new department to deal with homelessness. They fund us, and so what we're saying on one part, this body particularly is saying, help the homeless, house the homeless. The county is putting a bunch of money in for supportive housing with at least 3 or 4 different groups. And so when we are saying, create supportive housing, create new low-income housing opportunities, and our taxing bodies are doing that, I don't know that we're then the right body to turn around and say, oh, but do it without raising taxes.
So I just point out that our letter doesn't say, don't raise taxes. It says, consider the impact. That's all it says. It says, consider the impact on affordable housing.
I won't feel like a
But
hypocrite.
I just feel
Right.
really conflicted about it, because at least,
Understood.
you know.
Yeah, me too.
Anybody else?
Me too.
I did have some similar thoughts to that. It does feel like getting a slap on the wrist for answering to all of the applications that come forward from members of this body for county funding specifically, and following the mission that's asked for from AHAB. So absolutely, I mean, the ask that's included in the letter is to consider, and I think that all of these bodies very much do consider. I think if we're going to write letters, they should have a specific ask with a specific proactive suggestion for how that equity could be achieved. So whether that's support more commercial and industrial to diversify our economy so that we have less of a tax reliance upon residences. I think that is a very specific ask to put in front of, in that case, the city and the county. That doesn't apply to the school board. 3 separate letters, if we care about this, and if we decide to go forward with it, I think would be appropriate. I think it's appropriate to recognize the trade-offs so that it's a letter that's not just a gripe, that it is a recognition that, so in terms of like the school board voted to close schools in order to have, close some funding gaps, is my understanding. So then how else can they do that besides, raising taxes? Like, just recognizing that those trade-offs are real. And also that there is a serious reality about the cost of taxing in this community. I think both of those things are true. I don't mind being told that as a decision maker as many times as you'd like to, but I would like to be left with some kind of a solution that you would like to see.
Just don't pay for the stuff I don't like.
This is Christina Gentry. I would like, since we do have Karen Wiley, just a little bit of point of clarification, if you would. So those who apply and receive incentives for funding projects and apply through the city and receive those, what significant influence, or what does that do? If someone's approved for public incentives, does that affect eventually property tax? I'm saying in a small, in a micro, but at a larger level too. If the city approves the public incentives, say a developer wants to gain a certain amount of money, and those come from public incentives, what effect does that have on taxes exponentially down the road? I mean, I think it goes through the board. The school board has to approve that. There's lots of eyes and lenses on that before it goes to commission, and then it gets approved by our governing board. What are the effects, or what are the consequences, or how does that affect property taxes if there's a continual yes for public incentives and those be approved continuously?
So those incentives that you're talking about there are $0 that go from any taxing authority to that entity. And it is a break on new tax income that they would be generating for us for a short period of time. So when I look at the math on this, and it is a math question, it's not about who applied, if we like them or not. It has none of that. There's not a political decision in that. It is a dollars decision. If it makes more money for the county to take it off of existing taxpayers, then it's a yes. If it doesn't do that, then that is not something I'm interested in. So the way it gets played out in the public conversation doesn't reflect that, but this is not something that is paid for from existing dollars. This is something that we're saying we will get the tax income we've always had on that property. We'll get a little bit more tax income on that property. We'll get the full impact of that new development on that tax property in the future. So we are dollars ahead for those projects, or we wouldn't do it.
Okay, that's good clarity. Thank you.
I know it's not on our agenda, but I'm glad you asked. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging.
It's okay. All right, so let's try to wrap this up. I have 3 people, I think, that have kind of spoken against kind of sending, maybe not sending. Are we leaning towards not sending the letter? I'm kind of looking for consensus here that the boards, that the bodies that do this have this in their minds, which I'm sure they do. I thought our purpose was just to express this board's concern with that. Phil suggested maybe that when we or in a more appropriate time in the process, we come with with more detailed information. And Karen, again,
formulation that more mirrors what Karen said, something more specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that the city commission, the county commission, the public incentive review commission, they all look at those trade-offs as they're evaluating the stuff.
Sure they do. That's their job.
Yeah, that's their job.
Mr.
We
Chair,
hope they're doing that.
I first of all, appreciate your and Leah's work on putting this together. However, obviously, there are a lot of angles of this which we need to consider. And I'm going to recommend that we table this for the time being until we can have a more robust conversation around it, because it feels to me like there are conflicting, both of you indicated, yes, I feel conflicted on this. And so I think that we cannot at this point move forward with consensus until we've really worked through all of those things and figured them out.
Okay, thank you. Are we?
And I can agree with that. And this is also, if it speaks to you, it could be opportunities to speak to public comment during the opportunities when it opens up, if that becomes something that's public comment aware. So, yeah, I agree. We don't have to agree at all to move to recommend, but I strongly feel in the position of continuing to increase the opportunity to speak on this issue.
Okay.
I'd second the motion to table it.
Okay. So do we
Mr.
need to
Chair,
vote on that, or can we just not? Go ahead.
Sorry, Karen Willie again. I do think that the right letter could be really powerful. So I think tabling it is great, and making it a statement that really speaks to the full mission of AHAB, including the cost of tax piece. I think maybe we could get there.
Great. Okay.
Individual letters would also let there be some kind of acknowledgement that the county did lower 2 mills, the city kept a flat mill levy, and the school board increased their mills by 1.5. So rather than have one blanket statement across the board, we all have reasons for doing the things that we did, and I recognize that all of those still involve a tax increase because of valuation, but to give some acknowledgement of the forces behind the decisions that get made.
All right.
I'm patting Karen Willie on the head.
I'm glad we have planted the seed of this, and this will lead us further down this road, that we can have a more developed conversation around it.
Okay. So I think our action was to approve the letter. So I think we can just simply not act on this and table it. I don't think it takes a vote.
Motion,
Right.
okay.
A motion or vote, but I think we can. So we just simply not acting. We had a nice discussion, a very fruitful discussion, I might add. Okay, so we'll move on to C5, review and consider letter of support on Solar for All grant. Leah, I'm going to let you take this because you really took the lead on this program. And
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Leah Roseland. The EPA has released a NOFO for a Solar for All grant under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And I have been working with the County Sustainability Office as well as the City Sustainability Office to submit an application to compete for this grant. And at this time, we're just asking for the AHAB to consider submitting a letter of support that can be submitted with that grant opportunity. You can see the draft here, and it again simply aligns the issue of affordability with solar. So what the grant would do, what we would be asking for is to have solar installed on new affordable housing developments, including perhaps some private residence of units where the residents meet the AMI requirements of 30 to 80% AMI, or to retrofit existing affordable housing units with solar. This would be done throughout the county. And we're still, fine-tuning the actual administration of the program. But that would be the intent of the program, is to get solar installed on affordable units and income qualified households to further increase our sustainability impact as well as housing affordability.
Mr. Chairman, this is a grant, right?
Yeah.
A grant, not a, okay. I'm good with it.
we're just supporting a grant.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Do we need to, Leah, you signed, I know you drafted this letter and you signed it from you. Do we need to make that if we're
It's also,
supporting?
yeah.
Just cut off.
You're in there, buddy.
Yeah, if there could be a vote, that would be
Okay,
helpful
that's
just to
fine.
get formal
That's fine.
approval.
That's fine.
I would move that we move forward with sending this.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, I'm going to call the roll real quick and then we'll get on. Karen?
I'll say yes. Do we need to have public comment on this item?
I don't.
Sure.
I don't.
There's nobody here for public comment.
There's no one here. Is there anybody online? So I know that probably is a formality, but okay. Sarah had to drop off. So we have Philip,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Trent,
Yes.
Monty, yes, that's 8-0. So we will be submitting that supporting letter. And let me get back to my agenda here. That concludes our regular agenda. We have committee updates. A Place for Everyone plan, Affordable Housing Work Group update. Who would be providing that?
If I could, Monty, I apologize. I do need to take off pretty soon. If I couldn't just give a really quick update
Yeah,
to the
sure.
Equity Inclusion Work Group. And then also Leah was in attendance, so if there's anything that I miss, maybe there can be an added conversation to have or added info updating. Yes, the Equity and Inclusion Work Group met August 17th. And in that time, there were, I would say, about 5 people in attendance. There was really a move to endorse education piece. There was also talking about draft recommendation strategies and goals to increase racial equity in housing. There's also a tone of where the facilitators had shared that they would be stepping down and moving into creating smaller work groups, and there was a time for those who would wish to step into the space of being a leader in each of the work groups that were decided upon. So this is not any information, it's really an update, understanding that there may be more opportunities for AHAB to have leadership in this space to come forward.
Okay. Thank you, Christina. Any questions for Christina? All right, we'll move on to thank you, Christina. We'll move on to the Land Development Code. A couple people on it. Phil?
Well, yeah, Jeff can probably speak to this more exactly than I can, but the second draft of the second module is due sometime in the near future. You know, Jeff might fill us in a little bit on that.
That's about as accurate a date as I've got it also at the same point. We're working to get that out this fall, so we're hoping to have Module 2, which will be the development regulations and those kind of details coming out as part of that. But it also expects, you know, stuff that was in Module 1 to maybe getting revised or updated depending upon how we're hearing in Module 2, and getting some of those linkages connected back that were question marks in the first one that we're now connecting through on that one. But that should be coming out this fall, so as soon as we get a better date, I'll make sure to share with the group.
All right.
Would you remind me the website we can go to?
So the website is lawrenceks.org/LDC.
And when does that close? Is that the meeting in a box, or is it already closed?
No, meeting in the box is still out there.
That's the one I want.
I'm hoping Leah or Danny might have a computer that's working. Mine has decided to quit on me. I think that doesn't stop until about mid-September, if I remember correctly. So it does have some time still on the meeting in a box.
And it's just that simple, meeting in a box?
Yep. Mm-hmm. September 15th. Thank you, Leah.
It's like it is mid-summer.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Other Lawrence affordable housing updates. These are basically just articles and things that have been in the news lately. I don't know if we need to talk about any of those specifically.
Mr. Chair, I think probably I should have it, since I am quoted in one of those articles and I identify myself as a member of this board. I attended the Brook Creek neighbors concerned about the 528-unit development that is planned for, that is proposed for East 15th Street / 1500 Road. And you had a brief note to me about that, saying, doesn't this meet our requirements? One of the elements, first of all, the size and the scale is unprecedented in this community, I believe. They are trying to go for a RM32 zoning. I believe there is only one other development in town that is done that way. They claim that this is an infill development. My understanding is that infill requires usage of existing infrastructure, and the infrastructure which is in place on 15th Street as exists could not handle a development of this size. The size, scale, massing of this property, I feel, is completely inappropriate, and as much as I'd love to see a bunch more affordable houses or affordable units, I'm not convinced that this meets that criteria.
Mr. Chair, this is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing Administrator. The Prime Company is planning on submitting an Affordable Housing Trust Fund application for this project. And so I just want the board to be careful about making any predeterminations on the project before a fair and impartial review of that project based on the application that's submitted.
Okay. All right, any other comments on any of this? Okay. Next item is affordable housing organization updates. That's Family Promise, which Dana is gone, Housing Authority, Shannon's here. Do you have any updates to provide us? Anything we need to know about that's?
So,
We don't usually get to this part of the meeting. So, you might be on the spot a little bit. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Habitat, Erica's not here, and Tenants, Nicholas is not here, so I don't think we'll have those. So, homeownership general brochure updated. What is that?
So
about that.
Lauren's Habitat for Erica submitted these brochures
Oh, okay.
to be attached to the agenda since she wouldn't be present for updates.
Okay. I did not get a chance to look at those, so I will do that. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation draft 2024 qualified allocation plan. Public comment is still open until September 18th. So if you are interested in that, please go to that website. There's a calendar. I'm not going to read through the calendar for you.
There's a chairman I love.
And with that, I suggest we adjourn. I might note 5 minutes ahead of time. Rare occasion. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.